बिल्कुल बिल्कुल।
इस आभासी पटल में जुड़े हुए सभी लोगों को नमस्कार, मैम को विशेष करके नमस्कार। हम लोग अब उत्तर भारत से दक्षिण की ओर चल चुके हैं। महाराष्ट्र का हमारा जो प्रवेश द्वार था उस पर हम लोगों ने पिछली बार चर्चा कर ली है। चालुक्य पीरियड का जो वैभव था उसको भी जान लिया है। आज हम पल्लव कालीन जो कलाएं हैं, कलाकृतियां हैं, मंदिर हैं, स्थापत्य है, उनके बारे में हमसे जानेंगे। मैं देखता हूँ इतिहास की दृष्टि से देखता हूँ तो ये दक्षिण भारत का तो ये प्रारंभ ही दिखा रहे हैं। ईसा पूर्व 600 से 900 तक इसका समय दिखा रहे हैं पल्लव कालीन जो राजा थे। उसके बाद ही चोलकालीन है, पांडकालीन है, विजयनगर पद्धति है, मथुरा के नायक है। तो दक्षिण भारत की एक प्रकार से यह प्रारंभिक वो है, विकास कह सकते हैं। और जैसा कि पिछली बार भी मैंने बताया था कि इसकी सुरक्षा का कारण यह भी है कि उत्तर भारत की अपेक्षा दक्षिण भारत में कम आक्रमण हुए। प्रवेश द्वार जो था आक्रमणकर्ताओं का वो उत्तर भारत था, तो इसलिए यहाँ का वैभव सुरक्षित है। और उत्तर भारत में भी इस तरह से अगर सुरक्षित होता तो हम निश्चित रूप से कह सकते हैं कि हमारे देश का गौरव और बढ़ता। तो इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ हम मैम को आज मंच देते हैं। और सबसे पहले हम जीतू भाई के प्रति भी हार्दिक अभिनंदन और स्वागत करते हैं कि उनकी संकल्पना के कारण सबको यह पूर्ण लाभ मिल रहा है। और साथ में इस पूरे आयोजन के लिए जो पुण्यार्चक लोगों ने अपना दान दिया है उसके लिए श्री राजकुमार जी ओसवाल का परिवार, श्री निर्मल भोगीलाल जी मुंबई, श्री स्मृति शेष धनेश जी की स्मृति में उनका परिवार एवं मातु श्री राजकुमारी सुमेश चंद जी के परिवार के प्रति भी हम हार्दिक अभिनंदन एवं स्वागत करते हैं। और इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ में मैम से निवेदन करते हैं कि आज का जो मुख्य टॉपिक है उस पर अपना वो प्रकाश डालेंगी।
Thank you, sir. Yes, and okay. Okay. Namaste, everybody. Welcome. Yeah. So our journey is now moving further. Everybody can hear me? Yeah. Okay. It's moving further southward, and we learned about the cave temples and some structural temples from the Deccan area last time. And now today we will get familiar with the temple terminology from South India, and then accordingly we'll also see some cave temples and structural temples also. Okay. So I think I have shown you this earlier also. This is just for the sake of little revision, that we said that the body of the temple is almost, it kind of simulates the body of a man and in turn body of the deity, right? And the different parts correspond, the body parts, the physiology or the anatomy of human body corresponds to different parts of the temple. Like here you can see Charanam or Pitham here. This is the Adhishtan. Then Janu Mandalam, the knee here. Then Padavargam, the walls here. Okay. Then this is the Prastaram. Then Bahubulam, shoulders. Kantham or Griva as we call it. And the Shikharam, the Stupi. Right. And corresponding to different body parts of the deity or human body. The most important thing to remember in Dravid temples is we keep talking about Shikhar, the superstructure of any temple. It's coming from the Nagar terminology, which is called as Shikhar, right? That's how we address it. But when we talk about Dravidian temples, Shikhar only constitutes the uppermost part of the body, of the temple, all right, the Kapula, right at the apex. It's not the entire superstructure actually is called a Viman. And sometimes the entire temple is also called a Viman. Sometimes the part of Garbhagriha and the superstructure together, they constitute a Viman. So this is very, very important. Otherwise, you will always get confused that when I say Shikhar in a Dravidian temple, it is only the topmost part of the superstructure. Okay, very important for us to remember this. Okay, so here, these are some of the different parts and mainly differences between Nagar and Dravid temples. So in the Nagar temples, we saw there the curvilinear shikhar. It almost goes like this and then slightly curves or right at the top. But in Dravidian temples, we know that it's a pyramidal superstructure as compared to the curvilinear that we have in Nagar temples. And shikhar is only this top part. This entire superstructure is called a Vimana. All right. This is the shikhar here that we are talking about. The ceiling decorations that we saw in, West Indian temples, some Khajuraho temples also, Chalukyan temples also. But the Vitan or the ceiling decorations are almost absent, you will find in a South Indian temple. In fact, most of the time, the ceilings they just have these transverse roof slabs, all right. Unlike the Naga temple, the Nabhichand, the Gajatalu, the lantern ceiling, all these different decorations that we saw. Then Dvajastambha, a must in a Dravidian temple. Nagar temple optional or almost non-existent, I would say. Okay. The main image in the Garbhagriha, in this Dravidian temples, you can find made up of stone, wood, or stucco also, right? All three these different media are used. Then very typical of Dravidian temples is also the Utsav Bhera, the processional, icons that are very, very important in most of the Dravidian temples, because that's a very regular practice in most of the temples that there'll be a chariot procession in which the Chalmurtis or the Utsav Bheras. Bhera means any icon. Utsav means any occasion on which you're celebrating. Okay. So Utsav Bheras are very, very essential in Dravid temples. Also, another thing is the temple tank or the Pushkarani, as it is called, very, very essential in Dravidian temples. We have found some of these water bodies or Pushkarnis in sun temples, right? In Martan temple or Modhera temple or in Konark temple also, there was a provision for the water body. But other than that, we do not normally encounter any kind of Pushkarani or a temple tank, right? Now here again, if you have already must have seen, I wanted to show you different parts again. Here you can see this is the Adhisthana. These are the Adhishthan moldings, Upranata, Padma, Kumuda, Pratikantha, okay? And these are the Bhitti Stambhas. Bhitti Stambhas are nothing but the pilasters, the engaged pillars which is part of the wall here, okay? And these are called the koshthas or the, niches. They are called the koshthas here. And you will have a toran here. So most of the time, the toran that you have on the, capping any kind of a koshtha or a niche, they are called bhitti toranas. Bhitti toranas are something which is part of the wall. Okay, they are not freestanding as we saw in Khajuraho temples or Dilwara temples or any of the North Indian temples, whereby they are not they are not carved on the wall, but they are protruding outside from the wall. Okay. Then of course this is the Padvarga or the main walls of the temple. Kapot, we already know this, Kapot here. Then Kuta, Shala, Kuta, and in between the Panjara. This I will explain to you in a different separate diagram. So most of the superstructure or the Vimana is actually the alternate placement of these, actually they are all architectural elements, the kuta, the hut type kind of, or a rectangular shrine here. So that's called a shala. And in between, you have the Panjra here. So Panjra is nothing but this this area that you will get in between the kutas and the shalas here. Okay. Then this again is the kapota. This part is actually called the prasara. And hara is this area where you have this alternate, almost like a garland, it's going around in the superstructure. So that's why the hara it's called. So normally you will find, if it is a Shiva temple, you will find the vrishas, or the, four nandis seated in four cardinal directions here. This is the griva portion. And this is Mahanasi here. And on the side, it will be called the Alpnasi. And this portion is called Shikhar. Then there is an inverted lotus on top, the Padma here, and the Stupi on top. Okay. So normally you will find the Shukanasi that we have been talking about, which actually constitutes the superstructure over Antaral, or the vestibule. That is almost missing in Dravidian temples. Okay. So now we are looking at the hara portion very, very closely. So this is the prastara. This is this. These are the walls, the prastara. This is the hara portion. And this is the next level. These decorations, what we had called as gavakshas in North Indian temples, they are called kudus. You should remember. And most of the time, these will be blind gavakshas, inside which most of the time some kind of faces are shown to be emerging out, or some kind of vegetation motifs will be there inside. So now if you, correspond this particular picture to this diagram, you will know clearly. So kuta is nothing but this hut-like structure that we have here, right? And this is the shala here, the rectangular shrine. See, at all levels, this hara goes round like this. And these in between, the panjaras. So these are the panjaras where, if you have an apsidal shrine, so how the front of that shrine will look. These are called the panjaras in between. And these are nothing but, these are, the different shapes of the architecture which were prevalent, which are again being used here as a decorative motif. Okay. So it's very important. It constitutes very, very important part of Dravidian temple, especially the Vimanas. So different levels are actually demarcated by the Prastara and the Hara, right? And then after this, again, the next level will start. And this is how we know how many Tal Vimana is there, right? Okay. With this brief introduction, and then in between, I will again keep comparing the North Indian and the South Indian temple as we get to those features. Okay. So this is the main chronology that we are going to be talking about. So first the Pallavas, the Chalukyas we've already spoken about, because we are moving geographically, right? Then the Cholas, the Hoysalas, Pandyas, Vijayanagar. Then we have the Naikas also, right? Okay. So in fact, although there is a mention of Cholas right from modern period, right? But they came back to power only after defeating the Pallavas and the Chalukyas around the much later, 9th century. That's what it is shown here. Okay. Now we are going to concentrate on the Pallava dynasty and the temples built by them. So most of the temples or the religious architecture that we get, they were actually the kings were directly related, or they were the patrons. And that's why we can safely say that these are Pallava temples, right? So this is the lineage of Pallava dynasty. These are the early Pallavas, right till 560. And then later Pallavas, these three, Mahendravarman, Narsingvarman I, Narsingvarman II, who is also known as the Rajasimha, right? So if you look at this, and out of these also, Narsingvarman I, who is also known as the Mamalla, who is responsible for the rock cut cave and some monolithic temples. And then we have the Narsingvarman II, who is also known as Rajasingha. So he is actually the great grandson of Narsingvarman I. And these are the most, important two kings who are, responsible for most of the structures or religious edifices that have come down to us, right? So, in fact, Mahendravarman's reign is from, late 6th century to early 7th century. Inscriptions on stone begin to survive. Okay. In fact, he is the one who originated all the rock cut architecture in Tamil Nadu. He started in fact, the feuds between the Chalukyas and the Pandyas, which actually continued for 1.5 centuries. And I think if you remember, I had told you in between also that Narasimhavarman was, at one time, he had won the area of Vatapi, right? And he brought that Vatapi Ganpati to Kachipuram. And then later on, we will see that Vikramaditya II of Chalukyan, dynasty, he came and he, won over Kanchipuram also, right? So this was this constant battle which was going on between these different dynasties of that time. Okay, so in fact, Buddhism also flourished at Kachi during his time, which was also attested by Wensang, who came that time, right? Chinese traveler. So two Shiv saints, in fact, the Appar and Sambandar, we will talk about them later when we do the Chola bronzes, were thought to be his contemporary, but it was proved to be of later date, these two. Otherwise, earlier people thought that these two Shiv saints were from Mahendravarman's time. So he was a Jain originally, mind you, who got converted to Shaivism and has been alleged that he destroyed many Jain monastic settlements during his time, once he converted into Shaivism. His son Narasimhavarman, the most memorable sovereign of the line, carried successful wars with Chalukyans and captured Vatapi. We know that. He defeated Pulkesin II of the Chalukyan, dynasty at 3 places, in fact. And also he went on naval expeditions to Sri Lanka to help reinstate the, then prince there, who had kind of helped him when he was having a war against the Chalukyas. So all this history we know from the inscriptions that have come down to us. And the variety and the quality of the rock-cut monoliths and the monuments at Mahabalipuram attest to the greatness of the Narasimhavarman, who is also known as Mamalla. Okay. There's Narasimha II. In fact, he's not Narasimhavarman I's son. He is the great grandson, or Rajasimha as he's called, succeeded in 700 CE. He, of course, there was less warfare during his time, hence there was more artistic activity. We all know that there has to be a lot of peace in the kingdom for any kind of artistic activity to flourish, right? Okay, that's how it could be pursued very well. So the Kailashnath temple at Kanchipuram, the Erateshwara temple at Kachi, the Shore temple at Mahabalipuram are all credited to him, in fact. And it is also said that the poet Dandin, who is very popular South Indian poet, was supposed to be his contemporary. Okay. So this is the Pallava lineage And it is, very well said that kingdoms attain great prosperity, then disappear without a trace. But these architectural masterpieces that Mahendra and Mamalla created will remind people of their greatness for thousands of years. So the monuments at Mahabalipuram, it is considered to be the incubation center, of the Dravidian temples. So we have different kinds of structures. Number one, we have the sculptured scenes on hill edges, like the, great bas relief that we have, the Arjunas or the Bhagirathas pennants. Then we have the caves used as temples or the mandapams, such as the Vara cave, Mahishasur Mardini, the Krishna cave, etc. Then the monoliths that we have, freestanding temples, the rathas, the Panchrathas. And then, of course, the freestanding structural temples of masonry, such as the Shore temple, Kailashnath temple, and etc., etc. Okay. So this is where it all began. That why do I say that? in fact, in Tamil Nadu, 7th century inscription. This is the inscription in Grantha script. The language is Sanskrit, which states that the first rock-cut cave temple was made without rock, wood, metal, or mortar. Why do we say that? Because it was a cave temple. Yeah. And that this temple is credited to Pallava king Mahendravarman. And the dedication of this temple, as we can see, was to Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva all. And Vichitra Chitta was also another name for Mahendravarman. Okay, so this is the earliest inscriptions that we get, which tells us about the activity of temple building. So first we are going to talk about the bas relief, these two large boulders we have with a fissure in between that you can see, occupied by the Nagas and the Nagin, etc., etc. And in Anjali Mudra, like this, they are as if in the pose of veneration. Okay. And it kind of represents the river which is descending from the hills. Okay. So looking at this panel, there are two stories that come to our mind. One is the story from Mahabharata where Shiva is granting, the desired boon to Arjun, when he performs a lot of penance to get Pashupata weapons. Okay. And another story is that is called the Bhagiratha's penance, where Shiva is granting him the desired boon by agreeing to release Ganga through his matted locks. Okay, because the flow of the force with which the Ganga would come down from the heavens was so, huge that, everything on the earth would have gotten destroyed. Okay. So the story, I think we all know about Arjun's story, but Bhagiratha was actually a king who was responsible for bringing the river Ganges down, personified the river goddess Ganga here, that you can see from the heavens. So when he was the prince of Sagar dynasty, he did penance for almost 1,000 years to gain the release of his, 60,000 uncles who had kind of, fallen under the curse of the Saint Kapila, and they in the Patal Lok. Of course, so we are not going to get into the detail of that story. You can always go back and read that. So it is said that some people believe that it is Arjuna's penance that you see. You can see a Tapasvi here, Shiva here, granting boons, Ganas here, in the form of a Kirata here, the hunter. Then there is a ashram here, Badri ashram here. So in fact, there is a lot of, dichotomy or, जिसको हम विरोधाभास कहते हैं, कि some factors will tell you that, okay, it must be Arjuna's penance that's being shown here. And some other factors which we see in this stele or bas relief, it talks about the Bhagiratha's penance. Okay. And we'll also learn that a lot of, at this time during Pallava, in Pallava's court, there were poets like Dandin who were actually very much, used to using this punning in their literature, in the kavyas. In fact, Dandi is responsible for, writing one text which is called Raghav Pandaviya, where every verse, if you read, it talks about it. I mean, it's a storytelling which will also can be interpreted in both ways. It can be a verse from Ramayana as well as from Mahabharata also. And the name of the text is Raghav Pandaviya. So similarly, it is said, now the scholars agree on this, that probably it is just like we have Visammadhan Kavyas, similarly, this is also a riddle, a Shilp Prahelika, whereby the viewer is actually kind of, he's left to imagine both the stories in this particular panel. Okay. Yeah. In fact, the Arjuna story describes exactly as it is shown in the text. Okay. So this is the detail that I wanted to show you. So when we think about Arjun's story, we say hunters, sages, the wild animals, lion, then tiger, elephants, boar, aura there. So look at the tapasvi here. The sage almost stands on his left foot, deeply engaged in penance, seeking to, acquire spiritual knowledge or tapas or whatever. Staring straight, in fact, as if focused on sun soon after dawn. And the gaze is accentuated by arched brows, very prominent cheekbones, flared nostrils, you can see, and broadly set mouth. And highly emaciated body, sunken rib cage, you can see, protruding elbows, and the right foot is raised as if suspended with painfully with a very, very taut arch that you can see here. Here you can see Shiva, his trident here, and then in fact, the other ayudhas are almost in the form of the ganas, the personification of the other attributes. Yeah. Then, of course, the Surya, Chandra, the Kinnaras, Siddhas, Gandharvas, Apsaras, etc., all are rushing, in fact, towards the central point here. You can see this. So there is a lot of importance which is given to this cleft here in the center, which actually makes one believe that probably it is the Bhagiratha story where Ganges, goddess Ganga, is made to flow from the heavens to the earth. So this is the visual prominence which is given to this central fissure of the river. Okay. But also in the next one, we will see some of these figures are moving away from the central, fissure. They have their backs towards this. So this is the Badri ashram. You have Vishnu here. So I think I spoke about Arjun being the Ansh of Vishnu on the earth. So the twin brothers, the Nar and the Narayan, right? We saw that sculpture on the Devgarh temple, the Dashavtar temple, right? Okay. So visual prominence, we know that the Nagas are there in the center. Now here you can see very, very clearly. Yeah. Okay. This is another one. So, let me show you some, detail. Yeah. So here you can see the lion is there, the deers are there. So it is not only in literature that you can have the use of the alankars or the metaphors. Even in, art, all the time we come across. So this you can say Drishtanta alankar, where which actually shows that it's a peaceful environment of the Badri because you can see the deers and the lions all together, right? Okay, so this is the Kuta structure that I was talking about, just the hut-like. This is the Prastara, yeah? And this is the Vyala. Vyala is we've already spoken about. So any row of the Vyalas together will be called as the Vyala Valli, right, in South India. Okay. So this simultaneous narrative, in fact, that's the crux of this particular bas relief that we should all learn about. Okay, very important. So just next to this, now here you can see this, the big bas relief that we just talked about. And this is adjacent, almost south of Arjuna's penance, you have the Krishna Mandapa here, right? And these pillars are very typical of the Pallavas, where you have the squatted lions at the base, and the shaft is emanating from their backs like this, and fluted they are, right? Fluted means dhariyan bani hui hai usme, right? Okay. So this is of course, the detail inside. At the back wall, you have in the Krishna Mandapa episode of Krishna lifting the Govardhan mountain here. You have Balram on the side, gopis, etc., etc. This is the detail. The milkmaids, with milk pots, you can see very clearly here. Do you see here? Very animated depiction. Then there is a guy who's milking the cows here. Lions on the mountain, you can see on top, right? And in fact, if we haven't seen that, there is a similar scene on the Ellora caves also, but this is much, much better. So this, of course, the cow herd is milking the cow. The animal is licking the calf in a very, very naturalistic way. Yeah, very superb rendition. Right. So this is the detail. Now here you can see this is Krishna lifting the Govardhan. So when we are talking about cave temples, there are many, many limitations for the artist and for the architect also, because the kind of cave, the shape, etc., all that, all those features need to be, considered when any sculpture or any architectural feature is being introduced in the. So look at this, almost very, very scared, these gopis, receding, right? Moving backwards. So just this slight tilt almost gives us that impression that they are, almost, it's adbhut ras, hai na? That, he's lifting the mountain and everybody's looking like as if they couldn't believe as to what was happening. Right. Okay. This is the next cave that we have, Varha cave, against all 7th century Pallava period. So this has 4 panels, as we can see, Varha, Trivikrama, Gajalakshmi here, and Durga here, right? And this is a small mandapam inside. So this is so these 2 are on the side here that we are seeing, and Lakshmi and Durga you have here. And probably inside there was a Shivlinga earlier. Okay. So this is, you can see the interior of the cave here. And I'd want you to note this, the Hasti Hasta railing here, the banister, yeah. And here you can see very clearly Gajalakshmi here, 2, elephants on the 2 sides. There are maids who are bringing water pots for the lustration of the Devi. And the Trivikrama, Vishnu here, I think, I told you the story about King Bali, and he measured the, all the 3 lokas with 2 steps only, one on top and one at the bottom. And the third one, he didn't know where to put, and Bali offers his head, right? And also you can sometimes see Trishunku also hanging in the, in the air, which actually goes to prove that his, one leg has almost reached the heavens. Right. Okay. So this is the detail of the Vara from form of Vishnu, Vara cave, 7th century. So you can see the snout of the Vara here has been chiseled really with great care. Hai. And the face is fixed in such a way that it blends with human contours very well. You don't feel that it is just an appendage as such. All right. So then you have Surya, Brahma, Rishis, and a goddess, Prithvi herself, all very, very well rendered in this particular relief that we have. Almost, I would say, high relief work this is. And right foot, in fact, rests on the head of a Naga king. So most of the time, the Asura, from whom the Varha rescues Bhudevi, he's almost always shown in the form of a Naga, right? Because he is rescuing her from the netherworld, the Patal Lok, right? Okay, and this is, of course, Vishnu here, you can see clearly, holds his bow, sword, shield, in addition to the conch, discus, and the club here. Okay. These are the 2 sculptures of Lakshmi, wearing a peculiar crown here, you can see, and the 2 elephants we already spoken about. And this is the sculpture of Durga on the adjacent wall here. She's standing. One hand is Kati Hasta. There are 2 men here almost prostrating, and one is almost ready to offer his head in the service of the deity here. Sorry. And you have the lion has gone up here, of course, instead of being at the base. Okay. So sometimes the limitation of the space also somehow, the artist will kind of reorganize the different elements that he wants to show in a particular sculpture. Then, of course, we have the next cave, which is the Mahishasur-Mardini cave. Okay. One second, let me just see. So this is the next cave. Yeah. There's a long hall with a triple cell inside, which shows, I mean, there are polygonal columns that you see here. And there is a, Somskanda sculpture right at the back of the Garbhagriha, right? So now Somskanda panel is nothing but Shiva and Uma or Parvati with Skanda, their son. So this sculpture of seated Shiva and his consort Parvati, also known as Uma, accompanied by their infant son, is Skanda is visualized in the Tamil Hindu tradition as a representation of an ideal divine family. Somskanda means with Uma and Skanda, and is the most important image of Shiva in the south of India after the linga, his abstract form. Okay. This is because it is believed that the faithfuls can obtain individual blessings from Shiva when he is in the company of Uma. In Indian art, this image, in fact, only appears in South India, right? Okay. In fact, it is also intended to emphasize the importance of the child in a family life and in society. So the three figures also represent the, the Sat, Chit, and Anand. All right, these three different factors. And further, it is also viewed that the figures of Shiva, Uma, and Skanda represent three different things: the Ichha Shakti, the Kriya Shakti, and the Jnana Shakti, respectively. Okay. Again, Shiva in the company of Uma and Skanda also symbolizes universal parentage. Okay. And the couple is, seen as the father and mother of the world, or the Jagat Pitru, as they are called, right? In fact, it's called, Kalidas is the one who calls them this, who has, in fact, left an immortal epic in the form of Kumar Sambhava, which talks about the birth of Skanda and how it all, comes about. Okay. On one side, you have Sheshai Vishnu that we will see soon. And on the right side is the Mahishasur-Mardini. Okay. In fact, the central Garbhagriha was intended for Shivalinga. So this is the image of Vishnu in Yog Nidra. Ayudhas, the Purushas of Vishnu, which are present. Yeah. And Madhu Ketab, we've already seen this sculpture in the Devgarh temple. Also, I've shown you that, right? So all the personification of his four attributes that we see here. And this is a very famous, very popular Mahishasur-Mardini, Devi killing Mahisha. So Mahisha here you can see in anthropomorphic form, very, very powerfully delineated. I would say that battle scene is full of animation. One of the most remarkable representation, I would say, of Mahishasur-Mardini in a group, which actually there are other sculptures we have in Ellora, and we've seen some others already in other temples. So in fact, now you see Devi is shown much, much smaller as compared to Mahisha, and probably the lion also, which is actually much against the Indian idiom, or whereby the important, or the protagonist of any art will always have much, much larger, proportion, just to attribute a larger importance. You can see the asuras here almost receding back. Yeah. And this kind of a diagonal always will impart a lot of movement to any kind of art or sculpture. So if the same person was standing erect like this, probably you will not get this kind of a commotion or a movement in any piece of art. All right. So this is very, very important. Any diagonals in a art which always will show a lot of movement. Now we will talk about the Pancharathas at Mamallapuram or Mahabalipuram, attributed to Mamalla or Narasimhavarman I. It appears to be, I would say, an architectural library or gallery of sorts, whereby we get to see, in fact, the variety of structures that must be prevalent at that time. So all different kinds of structures we see in this particular space here. So here you can see this is the location here, one after the other. And these almost they are in one line, these four. Then you have a lion and an elephant. A lion here because of the Draupadi here. And there is an elephant here because of the Nakul Sahadev Ratha, which is in the Gajprishtakriti. So almost simulating the shape of the elephant's back here. I know. So, in fact, Rathas, without any historical basis with the Pandavas, as I have told you earlier also, they are, known by the names of these five Pandavas and the Draupadi, their spouse. Okay. So first, quickly, we'll just go through the different Rathas. So the Draupadi Rath we have, domical roof inspired from the thatched roof. So, but mind you, we saw some of the Bengal temples that those were also inspired by the thatched roof structure. But what difference are we seeing here? So the Bangla roof it will hang here like this. It will go down like this. And then instead of this being a straight line, it would be curved like this. That's the typical Bangla roof that we saw. But this is a kuta structure that we normally get in South India. And now here you can very clearly see the Bhitti Torana. Bhitti Torana is here, the Makar Toran is engraved on the temple wall, right? It's not a freestanding one. And you have two Dwarpalikas here because the shrine is dedicated to Devi. So you have, instead of male Dwarpalas, you have two Dwarpalikas here. Okay. So this is inside the shrine. There is a four-armed goddess that we have in the form of Durga here. Two male worshippers, almost the same as we saw in the earlier cave that we saw, where there was, two sculptures juxtaposed, Lakshmi and Durga. So it's almost the same sculpture. Just the lion, which was there on top, is missing. Here also, he's trying to kind of decapitate his head and offer it to the Devi, standing on a double lotus pedestal here and holding different attributes here. Yeah. So here she is shown in a very, very pacified form, and a benevolent form. Then we have the Arjun Ratha. It almost resembles a small palace or a pavilion with the sculpted pilasters. These are all the three sides of the this Ratha. You have these different 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 niches are there, and 7 sculptures you will find on all the three sides. And it shares the platform with the Draupadi Ratha. And probably it was dedicated to Vishnu. Okay. So these 5 carved panels you have on this. And the corner ones are kind of narrower, which have the Dwarpalas. Then you have the Shiva on Nandi here, and the Mithuna couples here in the center. All right. These are the kudus I spoke about. Now here we can clearly see, and in between also you have the Mithuna couple sitting. So this is the kuta, this is the shala, and these are the panjaras in between that you have. So this is first level, this is the second level, and this is the shikhar, octagonal shikhar, which we call as the Vishnu Chanda. And the bottom of this, normally you will have these nasis or the kudus, which are present here. And on this top level also you have the same kutas, shalas, the panjaras in between. Yeah. Okay. Then we have the Dharmaraj Ratha. Right. Now we are going further, we just saw Dvital Viman. Earlier one was just the single story. And this is Trital Viman, the southernmost, in fact, and the highest. In fact, the rock has a slope from south to north. So although the height of the temple is not that big, but because it's located at a much greater height. So here you can very clearly see it almost has most of the, structural elements of a Dravidian temple. This has these diminishing stories that you have, topped by this octagonal shikhar, each with kutas, shalas, pancharas, kudus, etc., etc. Again, you have the squatted lions as the pillars bases here. And there are sculptures here on the niches, of course, incomplete. And the temple proper, in fact, is divided into different niches with carved images. Upper story designed to house a sanctum. So there are these levels that we see. There are two kinds. One is the anarpita, whereby you can go up, enter that level. Probably there is a shrine inside, and you can go round and take a circumambulation here. So those kinds are called the anarpitas, and some will be just the blind ones, whereby you cannot enter and you cannot even go around the this superstructure. So those are called the arpita kind. Okay. So on the second tier here, you have, different sculptures, the Gangadhar Murti, Vishnu, Shiva dancing, Vrishabhvahana Shiva, etc., etc. And the third story actually has the Somskanda, all right, the Shiva family, which is the metaphor for the royal family also, right? Because the kingship was always, next to the divinity, right? So these are also here, you have the sculpture, you have the inscriptions here, and it says King Mamalla. The king is identified by the inscription above the figure in the niche. So in fact, he occupies this, the west corner of the southern wall. Okay. And in the company of the gods here, you can see Vishnu here in this niche here. So, in fact, he's almost looking like God himself, hat like these, crowns that they wear in the Pallava period. And it is also speculated that probably this was a funerary, portrait, since it is placed in the southern direction, the direction of the dead, or the direction of the Yama, for that matter. And also here, the typical elongated, Pallava sculptural style, the elongated limbs with, pipe or pipe stem-like legs, and very, very attenuated form is very evident. And this actually, we do not see that, fuller bodies of the Chalukyan sculptures that we saw last time. Okay. And these are very characteristic of Pallava sculptures. Yeah. Okay. So this is, of course, the top story. I'm showing you the Somskanda here, the Uma Parvati with their, assistants here. So here, if we look at this is the one that we are talking about, the Dharmaraj Ratha. So two things about Dravidian temples you should know: the Vinyas Sutra, or the lineal thread. So if we, stretch a thread from this side to this end or to this end, everything is fitting inside. There is no protrusion outside. Okay. They all fall just in line with the plinth. Okay. But in Nagar temples, we don't have this. The molding spread out in a very, very expanding way. We saw that in Khajuraho temples or other temples also. Like this, they will go as if clasping the Vedi bandh, right? That's how we saw the Nagar temples. And similarly, if you have the Man Sutra or the plumb line, if you take plumb line from here till here, it will fall in straight line. Nothing is coming out, right? And within the plinth line. So in the Nagar temple, this is not so. We have those Bhadra niches, which are protruding out, or we have the balconied, porches on all the three walls of the temple. Probably sometimes Mandapa also has those, transverse sections which are protruding out from the main wall. So this is another very typical feature of the Dravidian temple. And this, of course, is the Somskanda on the backside of the sanctum on the top floor. Then we have the Bhimratha. All right. The large shrine almost echoes the palace architecture, I would say, with its barrel vaulting. Barrel vaulting मतलब pipe के जैसा है, जैसे कि barrel को क्या बोलेंगे, cylindrical, है ना? So almost like a barrel here, of course incomplete, and the very shape almost suggests that probably it was meant to house probably Yog Nidra Vishnu or Anant Sheshai Vishnu, as he's called, right? And from top to bottom, it was made naturally. And so the down portion is still very, very, was left incomplete. The kudus here. And so the front portion of this is something, this is what here, you can see this. Yeah. So this is the Panjara. So when this shrine is shown, from the front side, that's how it is called, the Panjara. Okay. Right. Bhimratha, because of the extensive size of this particular structure. Then the last one, we have the one Rath, Nakul Sahdev, twin brothers, apsidal, of course, extended frontally to form a porch here. This is the extended porch that you have, the entrance by two lion figures here, the two lions, squatting lions at the base here. No figural carvings we have on this monolithic, and there is an elephant nearby, as if trying to suggest that this is the shape of the Prishtakriti, or the backside of the elephant is being shown here very, very beautifully. Okay. Then we can come to the structural temples now. The show temple at Mahabalipuram, made by Raj Singha or the Narsingvarman II. Very, very, there are two temples here, elongated, very narrow Viman, I would say that, very like this. It doesn't go up like this, very narrow. Okay. Facing east, Gopuram with boundary wall, you can see from here. So this is the temple which was actually constructed first, which is facing the east here, right? And there is an in-between shrine here, which can only be approached from this side, where you have the Anant Sheshai Vishnu. And this is the bigger temple, which can be entered from this side, right? From the western side. And in fact, Shore Temple, the very name suggests that it is, it is overlooking the Bay of Bengal. In fact, the tsunami that came in 2004 created havoc, and much of the temple structure was lost. Okay. Okay, yeah. So, as I told you, there are three neighboring shrines, one behind the other, a small west-facing Tritala Vishnu Chanda Vimana, Raj Singeshwara, which is also called. So, this is a practice in Dravidian temples. Many a times, the temple or the deity which is installed inside the Garbhagriha is also known by the name of the king. So, Raj Singeshwara, the name of the temple is. Okay. Fine. So this is, of course, the other detail that I'm going to. So the stone is a very, very dark coarse called liptonite. Okay. And the flooring, in fact, it is more visible in the next that I will show you. Okay. So the flooring below is actually that of the granite. Okay. But the entire stone is not made of granite. The prakara wall, this is another very typical feature of the South Indian temples. You will mostly have a, boundary wall on which, depending on the dedication, you will, if it is a Shiv temple, you will find number of Nandis seated on the prakara wall, almost making a coping of that. Okay. Right. So here you can very clearly see the two temples here, and this is the in-between, the flat-roofed Anant Sheshai temple that we have here. And here clearly you can see the different, in fact, here you have very prominent stupis also on each of these shalas and kutas, right? So this is the main Garbhagriha in the temple, which houses this family portrait of Shiva Uma. I've been repeatedly saying that. And inside the Garbhagriha is a tall, very, very highly polished Dhara Linga. Dhara Linga is the fluted. Okay, that's what is called. Dhara means, the kind of striation that we get. Then next we will talk about the Kailashnath temple at Kanchipuram. Again, Narsingvarman II. And This is, of course, the epitome of the Pallava, temples that were built by the kings. And of course, from inscriptional evidence, we know that, in fact, there is another smaller temple which is there, which was built by another king, but never got completed in the presence of Narsimhavarman too, right? And of course, the entire Prakara wall has subsidiary shrines abutted with the boundary wall. But in the front, you have this additional second row of subsidiary shrines also, which probably were added by his son Mahendra Verma. Okay, 3 during his father's lifetime. Okay. Okay. So this is the plan. Just by looking at the plan, it is very easy for us to understand. So I was talking about that Shukanasi or the Mahanasika, which is actually part of the Antaral, the superstructure, which is almost, absent in most of the temples, but few temples you will find. Whereas in Nagar temples, it formed a very, very prominent superstructure of the Antaral, right? Okay. And also here, this is another feature. The roofs of the axial elements, whether it is Ardhamandap, Mukhamandap, Gud Mandap, most of them, they will not have any kind of superstructure. They are almost flat, unlike the Nagar temples where, you will have those Famsana things going on the mandap, as a superstructure, right? So most of the time, these will be absent, any kind of superstructure. The Dwarpalas are very important in Dravidian temples, and mostly they are very, very ferocious and sometimes also benevolent, and almost, life size, sometimes even larger than life, they will be shown here. And another feature is, normally you will not find those high platforms or the terraces or the jagatis that we saw in Nagar temples. No, we saw Khajuraho temples, etc. The high platform on which the temple is, established. Here, there is just very low. These moldings are just very, very low here. And that's where the temple will immediately start. So it is believed that this portion and this portion of the temple, these are the original structures. And this mandap in between was constructed much, much later. Okay. And when we are looking at this ground plan here, you can see these extra shrines, subsidiary shrines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So most of the time, like how in Naga temples, we have the Panchayatan, when there is a main shrine in the center, 4 subsidiary shrines in the 4 cardinal directions. Or we have the different vyuhas, like how we saw in Lakshman temple, the different aspects of vyuhas were, shown just in one icon. But in South India, if it's a Shiva temple, you will have, Asht Parivar Devta or 16 or 32, etc., like this. Okay. So here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the Garbhagriha and 2 adjacent shrines on this here in the Antaralya. This is the new mandapa I told you. This is the open pillared mandapa here. And this is the old one. And this huge, Gopuram, which again is a very, very typical feature of South India, the Prakara wall, which has all the subsidiary shrines here. And these shrines which are facing the main Bhadras here. So this is actually a subsidiary shrine. And beyond this, there'll be a Bhadranisha. So these are bigger, much bigger, just to, accord this particular space a greater importance, I would say that. And this is that smaller shrine that his son was instrumental in the making. Okay. And this is actually the, here you can see the other row. Do you see this? The other rows, the second row of subsidiary shrines, which actually never got completed. Sorry. Yeah. So, in fact, Kailashnath temple, must have been the most important building of the Pallava times. In fact, it's Viman. Viman is the superstructure that I'm talking about here, right? This is the Viman that we are talking. Though it is much shorter compared to the Shore temple, but its architectural qualities are much, much more impressive from outside. Then another essential feature of Dravid temples is the Nandi Mandapam, which is absolutely essential if it's a Shaiv temple. In Nagar temple, it is optional. Sometimes you may have, and otherwise it is not a mandatory thing. Okay. Okay. So here you can see the prakara or the boundary wall. And these are the superstructures, in fact, of the subsidiary shrines which are there. The back wall of these shrines is actually this wall itself, right? So it was a large, rectangular courtyard inside. We are seeing it from outside right now. So these are those additional shrines that we have in the east, right? And so more than 50 subsidiary shrines are there. This is the second row of the shrines. And presence of Gopuram here. This is the Gopuram that probably we'll get to see clearly in the next slide. These are all very, very typical features. Okay. And of course, the Somskanda, again in the Garbhagriha, you have likened to the king and his wife in an inscription. The inscription says, which actually equates the image of Somskanda in the Garbhagriha to the king and his wife and the family, the synthesis of the kingly and the divine realms, I would say that. Okay. So the coping of the prakara here, the upper portion, as I said, has these Nandi figures. And also, as we saw in the Shore temple also, at the four corners, but you have different animals like there'll be elephant or the gaja, singha, the vrisha, etc. in the four corners of the wall. So this is, of course, the main Gopuram that we are trying to enter from here, aligned with the main temple. And many a times we will see later that this Gopuram, in fact, at many places will be much, much higher than the main temple also. It almost masks the temple which is there inside the, courtyard or the precinct of the temple which is there. And in Nagar temple, they are almost absent. And similarly, the Garbhagriha door frames also, we have seen such complicated and complex decorations in the dwarshakas, the lintel, etc. But in South India, you will find them very, very plain or very, I would say, less decoration or ornate as compared to the North Indian temples here. Okay. Right. So here you can see the family, the king and his wife is seated here under the two parasols, the attendants are. And these, almost crouching lions, you can see this becomes almost the, late motif of the Pallavas in the later period. Earlier, we saw the bases of the pillars were where the lions were sitting. Now, but here they are almost Udyat lion, almost, bouncing upon the somebody who's where he's looking at. Okay. Yes, so this is the eastern side. King is shown with his queen along with his aides here. So Rang Pataka is the name of the queen who gifted two of the North Row shrines. King's chief queen she is. And this is known from the inscription, right? And this inscription here is very, very important. It records the early Western Chalukyan king Vikramaditya. I spoke about him last time in the last lecture. Vikramaditya II visited the temple, and when he, won this Kanchipuram area, and he was so impressed by it that he did not carry off its treasures or the spoils of war, but instead allowed them to stay in the temple, which culminated into making of the Virupaksha temple that I showed you in the last class at Pattadakal. Okay. So in fact, it stands the very testimony for the grandeur of this particular temple. And this particular inscription, in fact, describes also how the invading Chalukyan king was overwhelmed by the grandeur of the structure and returned all the booty. So with this, he actually avenged his earlier humiliation by the Pallavas, as I told you, who had taken over Vatapi and engraved one of the oldest existing Kannada inscription here. Okay. That's what makes it so important. Then the Garbhagriha. So this is the, this is not the Garbhagriha shrine that I'm showing you. This is the Garbhagriha shrine here, right? And so it has a Somskanda panel here at the back again on the rear wall in the center. Okay, and this, of course, the linga is black basalt stone that we have here. So in Dravidian temples, one more point is the Pitha, or the pedestal for the linga, is very, very important. And many kinds are present. There is square, octagonal, circular, with variety of moldings. But in Naga temples, in fact, you will just have a small pindika at the base, just a ridge on which the Shivlinga is installed. We have seen that on all the temples, the Bhumra, Shiva temple, all those, the Gupta temples we will see. Then another important feature is the Pranala. A significant feature in Dravid temples. Sometimes you will have this feature in North Indian temples, sometimes you may not have. Okay. So here I'm trying to show you the two sides. We are entering from this side, and this is the southern side. And these are these protruding ones are actually the subsidiary shrines that we have here. Here you can see very clearly. Yeah. So these are those additional, the Ashtaparivar Devatas, and those shrines are there because it's a Shiva temple. And this is the detached mandap that you have. And the Dwarpala here you can see very, very clearly. Okay. Here you can see those subsidiary shrines very clearly. Right, this is the backside of the temple that we are looking at here. And these are the subsidiary shrines along the boundary wall here, capped by these octagonal shikhar. So this is the shikhar, basically. This whole thing is not shikhar. This is the prastara, the hara, and again the prastara, right? Okay. So, in fact, the inner walls of the Prakara wall it is said that it was once painted, and a lot of remnant paint also can be seen today also if you go and visit the temple. And there are various sculptural, wealths that you will see when you go to visit Kanchipuram temple. Durga, Skanda, Bhagavati, Tripurantaka, then you have Vishnu, the Asur Sanghar Murtis of Shiva, the Gajantaka, Andhakasur, the Trivikrama, Samudramanthan, Shiva in Tandav, etc., cutting off fifth head of Brahma. Many, many sculptures. I mean, it's a treasure house of the various Shaiv sculptures, but also a lot of Vaishnav sculptures you will find. The Bhikshatana Shiva, many, many different ones. And we will just enjoy some of the sculptures that we see on the temple walls also, and some sculptures which are present inside the subsidiary shrines, right? So this is the Lingodbhava Shiva, mostly present on the western part of the wall most of the time. And here you can see a person, almost going down, burrowing inside, and there's a person flying up here. So there's a story here while once the deities Vishnu and Brahma contested for superiority, Shiva appeared as a flame, right? And challenged them to find its source. So Brahma took the form of a swan, which is its mount, and flew to the sky to see the top of the flame, while Vishnu became the Bhuvara, and took the form of Vara and, went down inside. Under the earth. Okay. But neither Brahma nor Vishnu could find its source. And while, of course, Vishnu conceded his defeat, Brahma lied and said that he had found the pinnacle, and Because of this, of course, Shiva was angry and he was, punished for this. And he took on the form of Kal Bhairav and took apart one of the 5 heads of, Brahma as a punishment. And Shiva ordained that Brahma would never have temples on earth because of this. So this is one story, but there is another story also, which is very prevalent in other Puranas, as to why Brahma's 5th head was, shaved off by Shiva. So I'll tell you that also. Okay. So, in fact, Apar, which I talked about, one of the Shaivite saints of the 7th century, also gives evidence of this knowledge in Puranic, episodes relating to the Lingodbhava. All right. So, Lingodbhava is also present in one of the forms of Shiva. All right. And another Shaiv saint, the Sambandar, also refers this form of Shiva as the nature of light, actually, that could not be comprehended by Brahma and Shiva both. So, in fact, it is also, the Lingodbhav Shiva is also I would say, it is found in various Puranas. It is also it augments the synthesis of the old cults of the pillar and the phallic worship, like the cosmic pillar and the, worshipping the phallus, right? So the idea emerged from actually the deity residing in a pillar and later visualized in the form of Shiva emerging from the lingam here. So you can clearly see this. This is the lingam here, and he's actually emanating from there. Okay. Then this is the Dakshin Murti, is an aspect of Shiva as a guru or teacher of all types of knowledge. In fact, it is also said that his teachings are actually, he does not utter a word, and whatever that he wants to teach, that gets, transmitted to his followers. Okay. So this aspect of Shiva actually is his personification as the source, as the supreme or the ultimate awareness, understanding, and knowledge. Okay. And this form represents Shiva as the teacher of yoga, music, wisdom, giving all the, knowledge or exposition of the Shastras. Okay. So this is the other sculpture that I was talking about. Here, Shiva is almost in the act of shaving off, or he has already done. He's holding the 5th head of Brahma in his head here, right? And so another story goes by that, in fact, the Brahma's 4 heads, I should say, they represent 4 yugas or 4 Vedas also. And Brahma's 5th head was his ego. All right. And Lord Shiva actually cuts Brahma's this 5th head. And in Hindu mythology, in fact, when Brahma was creating the universe, he made a female deity known as Shatrupa. Shatrupa means literally Shatrupa, she of 100 beautiful forms. That's what the name suggests. So, in fact, the mythology uses her story also to explain Brahma's 4 heads and why the 5th head was chopped off. When Brahma created Shatrupa, he was immediately infatuated by her and pursued her wherever she went. And Shatrupa moved in various directions to avoid his gaze, but wherever she went, Brahma was always, going after her. All right. And desperate Shatrupa, in fact, leaped over him and to stay out of his gaze, even for a moment. And she went up like this. And that's how the, 5th head appeared above the others. And Brahma developed 5 heads. This is the story. At this moment, Shiva appeared and he cuts off the top head. And, it is determined that since Shatrupa was Brahma's daughter created by him, it was wrong. And, this kind of pursuing this female was absolutely wrong on Brahma's part and unholy. And thus only the other 2 gods of the Trimurti, Vishnu and Shiva, who are being worshipped. And Brahma is constantly, has been reciting the 4 Vedas one from every mouth in his attempt for repentance, okay, for all that he did earlier. So, in fact, immediately after this incident, Shiva, in fact, also goes, as performs penance because he had chopped off the fifth head of Brahma in the form of this Bhikshatana Shiva, okay, is the form of Bhairav that Shiva assumes for his sin of severing Brahma's fifth head, okay. So he wanders the universe in the form of a naked Kapali mendicant. And he, in fact, in one hand, he holds the Kapal, also Brahma's, skull cap as his begging bowl until his sin is expiated upon reaching the holy city of Varanasi, right? So here he is typically all naked, and his jatajut, his, all they are open, not, put in the right form here. And this here you can see Shiva in Urdhva Tandava, where right leg is held up close to the head. So we encountered different kinds of Tandava, mudras as far as Shiva is concerned. Anand Tandav, I think I showed you earlier, the right leg on Apsmar and the left foot thrust across the body. That's the Anand Tandav, which we call as the Nataraja. The Chatur Tandava, where right foot almost, it makes a square and the right foot bears the weight, right, which is there in the National Museum. Then you have the Lalit Tandav also. The left foot bears the weight of the body, right? So, but they are joined almost at the base, right? Both the legs. Then there is also Swastik Tandava, right? So this is the Swastik Tandav here. This pose is called because it almost forms a swastik. Yeah, multi-armed Shiva is shown with his various attributes here. Then he's also called Tandaveshwara, right? Or also known as the Sandhya Tandav. This is this particular pose. In fact, in Natya Shastra, it is called the Kunchita pose also, right? Okay. Then this is, of course, the Kirit Arjuniya, the Bharavi's very, very famous, text that he had, written, which became very popular, which talks about this Kirit Arjuniyam. This is the where Shiva is in the form of Kirita, right here, this one here. And this is Arjun here, right, in the human form. Yeah, so this theme is also very popular in South India. And this here we have the Narsimha. It is almost the same sculpture that we saw in the earlier Pattadakal area also. So some remnants of paint you can still see in these sculptures, which goes to, tell us that earlier all these sculptures were painted. So now, mind you, this is not a sculpture which is present on the temple wall. These are some sculptures which are there in the subsidiary shrines, right? Yeah. Then Kalantaka Shiva, here you have, right? Kalantaka is the story where Shiva kills Yama, who had come to take the Shiv devotee, Markandeya, right? So that's the story. I would really urge all of you to go back and look these, Puranic stories up so that it helps you to understand the sculptures much, much better. Okay. And this, of course, is the very, very popular Durga sculptures that there are multiple sculptures of Durga or Singhavahini that we have here. This is another one, the Singhavahini here. And this is Vishnu Trivikrama. Again, it appears. So as I said, although it's a Shiv temple, but there will be many, many sculptures depicting the Vaishnav theme also. So this is Ravan Anugrah Murti. I think I showed you earlier, or I will be showing you more. Elephanta Cave has this Ravan Anugrah Murti. So you have the multiple heads of Ravan here and multiple hands you can see here. And you can see Shiva on top, Parvati, etc. Almost clinging to, this person as if scared as to what is happening. The whole earth is shaking. And Shiva very coolly, just with one toe, he is trying to steady the entire Kailash mountain. Harihara here, you can see the mixed attributes of Shiva and Vishnu here. Again, a very popular theme of Ardhanarishvara, accompanied by Ganas here. So very pleasing, here you can see. And two kinds of kundals, always Ardhanarishvara you will find wearing, the Patra kundal and the Makar kundal. Then this is, of course, Gajalakshmi here. Again, I will show you the Makar Bhitti Toran here. So I hope everybody now understands what it is meant. These are the Bhitti Makar Toranas. Okay. So some more sculptures, Shiva as Tripurantaka. So sometimes some people may mistake between Shiva Tripurantaka and Vishnu as Trivikrama, but the main difference is Shiva is most of the time, he's trying to, kill the three demons, the three asuras, and that take over the three cities made of, different metals with one, shot of arrow here. Whereas the Vikrama Vishnu will be, he has, lifted one leg up always, reaching to the skies. That's how you can distinguish between the two. Then this is the Gajantaka Shiva. The Gajasur is the demon whom he's, vanquishing here. And then flaying its skin, he's, used it on the top of his head as a, cover on top. So that's how you can recognize. In fact, there are many sculptures which have the two aspects of Shiva, the Gajantaka and the Andhakasur Shiva. These both are, put together many a times. We have these sculptures in Elephanta, Ellora, many places, in fact, these sculptures are there. Then I'm tempted to talk about one last temple, which is not a Pallava temple, but a very, very beautiful Vethuvan Kovil temple at Kalugumalai, Tamil Nadu. And this is one of the earliest Pandya shrine of the 8th century. Or, in fact, I would say oldest surviving early Pandya shrine, this rock-cut temple that we have of Shiva. So the excavation of the temple, of course, progressed from top of the Shikhar down to the Prastara level, and of course, when for reasons which are unknown, which was left unfinished. Okay, so the Pandyas of Madurai, they were ruling from Madurai. Unfinished, rock cut, freestanding, liberated from the rock. So here you can see a beautiful, the trench, jisko hum Hindi mein khai bolte na. So originally it was all here, it was solid here, and just, making this trench in between, that's how this temple has come into being in the center. So, of course, it has a lot of Pallava influence also in the rendition of the body part or ornamentation, etc. So, in fact, just like the Ellora Kailashnath temple, it stands in a pit or a tench, and it is also contemporaneous to Ellora temple. Octagonal shikhar, you can see the vrishas seated here. And there are different sculptures that you find, the Uma Maheshwar here. In all the 4 directions, you have different sculptures. And here on the first level, the Pratham Tala also, there are different sculptures here. Then you have the Gana figures here and then there are Vyalavali here. All right. And malas, the pearl festooning emerging out. There is the Padma here. Of course, the stupa is broken here. So this is a Dvitala Vimana, I would say, among the most richly carved in all of South India. So these are the different sculptures that we find, which, when Shiva actually drinks the poison that came out from the churning of the ocean. All right. So that's what is being shown here. So almost, little bit inebriated, I would say that, closing his eyes here. So when this churning of the ocean was happening between Devas and the Asuras, this, came out, and it was, everybody was running helter and skelter that the entire universe is going to come to a standstill, or it will get swallowed up. And this is when Shiva comes forward and he kind of drinks the poison, and perpetually he holds it in his neck, and that's why he's also called the Nilkantha or a Nilkanteshwara. All right. And by doing this, he saved everyone and himself and acquired the epithet Vishparharana, or the destroyer of the poison. Okay. Very, very gracious form of Shiva, which we can see here. And Vishnu in the West Shala niche. This again is the first level that we are looking at. And now we can see some just more. Yeah. So here you can clearly see the Prastara, the Kutas, Shalas. Why am I repeating it so much? Because for the longest time, people do not understand as to what is the hara. So this is the hara portion, almost like a garland. It is enclosing the superstructure. And this is the prastara, all right, or prastara, this one also. And these are the 4 sculptures that we have here, or the Griva Koshthas, as they are called, because this is the Griva portion, and the Koshthas are these niches here. So the Griva Koshtha, of course, on the east side has Uma Maheshwara, and we'll see some more here. Then southern side has Dakshin Murti. The very name suggests Dakshin Murti we saw. Normally you will find Dakshin Murti image or the icon always present on the southern part of the temple. Okay. In fact, this Pandya temple is perhaps the first in Tamil Nadu to show such an iconographic distribution of deities, particularly in shalas and grivas. And this very placement, or which are, less followed in subsequent periods also. Okay. And Brahma is there in the northern direction. I don't know. Yeah. And Narsimha, yeah, very beautiful Narsimha you have. So despite being a Shaiv temple here, you have the very image of Narsimha here. Very, very beautiful. And this is one of my favorite images of this temple. And here you can appreciate the very intricacy of the decoration in stone, dog cut monument here. Very, very. In the absence of inscriptions, in fact, just judging from the style, we date this temple to 800 AD. Yeah. So with this, we have come to the end of this session. Yeah. Thank you very much.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैम. हम लोगों ने तो वास्तव में पहली बार इतने बड़े पत्थर में, एक पत्थर में, और इतने विशाल मंदिर देखे हैं. छोटे छोटे पत्थरों में तो देखे थे हम लोगों ने. मतलब राख मंदिर जैसे हमारे एमपी में भी है, कई गुफाएं हैं, ऐसे सब कुछ देखा है, लेकिन इतने विशालतम रूप में पहली बार देखा गया है. और मुझे लगता है कि इनका प्रचार प्रसार बहुत कम हुआ है. आज की जो युवा पीढ़ी है, ये पाश्चात्य विदेशों में जाती है घूमने के लिए, और अपने देश में ही नहीं जाती है.
जी, बिल्कुल बिल्कुल.
मुझे तो लगता है कि आज जो लोग देख रहे होंगे, निश्चित रूप से वो प्रेरित होंगे.
Yeah. So the beauty of these temples is they are very much, well preserved also. And I would say the basic, knowledge also, and the following of the Hindu religion, I would say it's very, very well preserved in southern India. And
निश्चित रूप से मतलब भारतीय संस्कृति का गौरव है ये हमारे.
Even a normal household, the kind of practices they follow in their houses is still very, very commendable. Yes.
चलिए, आपके लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, जो सभी को आप इतना पुण्य का काम कर रही हैं. और अगला सत्र हमारा 22 तारीख को होगा, जिसमें राष्ट्रकूट पीरियड के खास करके एलोरा आदि के आप विस्तार से वर्णन करेंगी. तो प्राय इस एलोरा को तो लोग थोड़ा सा जानते हैं, इतिहास में पढ़ाया जाता है, लेकिन आज जो भी हम लोगों ने देखा सुना है वो वास्तव में इतिहासकारों ने उसकी बड़ी उपेक्षा की है। तो इनका वो विकास होना चाहिए। इन शब्दों के साथ में आपके लिए फिर से
थैंक यू सर।
बहुत धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू एवरीबडी, सब श्रोतागण को भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
इतने मनो
या
बहुत
you see, whenever there is there are receptive mind, then it is much more enjoyable to also impart knowledge. Yeah, so thank you very much. Yes.
चलिए, सभी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। हम लोग फिर 22 तारीख